Hello, and welcome to Confessions of a Terrible Leader, where real leaders share the raw truth about the lessons they learned the hard way, so you don't have to. Join our host, Lacey Nelson, founder of Transcend Leadership Collective and former terrible leader. Every leader can become worthy of being followed if they are willing to put in the work. On this podcast, we share the messy stories and behind-the-scenes reality of what the work actually entails. We welcome you to this community of revolutionary leaders who believe honest communication, healthy conflict, and building cultures of acceptance, respect, and trust are not only possible, but non-negotiable for cultivating world-class teams.
Hello, listeners, and welcome back to Confessions of a Terrible Leader. I'm your host and former terrible leader, Lacey Nelson. Today, I have with me the absolute privilege of interviewing none other than Dr. John Reeves. He does not like when I use his doctor title, but he earned that with a lot of hard work. He also has more than earned the reputation in the farming industry as being someone to turn to for wisdom, for insight, his own story, his own legacy, which we're going to get to hear about today. We couldn't be more honored to have him being as part of the team at the Transcend Leadership Collective's Dr. John Reeves Agribusiness Leadership Institute. But that really is just a small part of his story. And I cannot wait for you, John, to share with us today how your journey has brought you where you're at now. You have national recognition, even international recognition for the influence and the amount of passion and really forward thinking that you bring to our industry. Thank you for being here today.
I think you're giving me more credit than I deserve. But I grew up in Southern Illinois, a very poor area in the United States. It is a tomato growing area and many other small crops. And one of the things about this is that every kid goes to work in that area. Doesn't matter who they are, where they are, how old they are, or what. I mean, everybody works. So I had the privilege of working with a black lady to start my career who was just fabulous. She was very patient with me, and I learned how to pick tomatoes, how to put the pieces in the right places, and on and on and on and on. So I have to give her a lot of credit here for this. The one thing that is different for me than maybe most kids is all the kids work, but I started wanting to do more. And my dad, who was not a farmer, had some land, and he gave me 5 acres to do what I wanted with, and that was to grow tomatoes. So I started growing tomatoes when I was about 10 years old. So
a baby.
Yeah. And I got around with a lot of the growers, learned a lot from them, and learned a lot from my dad. The way that worked back in those days is if you were a grower, you could join the co-op, and the co-op would have people there that pack your fruit. I was the only one that did not like the way they were packing their fruit. So I told them they couldn't pack my fruit that way. And the difference was growers in that area put the worst stuff at the bottom of the bag. Everything went to Chicago. It was about 400 miles away. I was a 12-year-old kid when that started. I was the youngest one in the place, and I'm the boss of 30-some people in there, and all of them were older than I was. And so how did this little kid tell them they couldn't do this and that? And I told them I would not pay if they did any difference than what I wanted. And the reason was my mother. My mother was a very devout Christian, didn't believe in lying, so I didn't believe in lying. I never took Christian part, but
You took the no lying part.
The no lying part was really important to me, so I stuck with that. And I had a broker in Chicago, which was 400 miles away, who never, ever met me firsthand. But he did send me checks every week, okay? So my dad's friend asked my dad one day how I was doing, because he thought it was a joke that I was out there doing tomatoes. And my dad said, well, he's doing pretty good. He got $2.75 a box last week. And the guy says, no, you mean $1.75. My dad said, no, I saw that he got more. And that was a big lesson for me, and probably for him, the other guy, because he had the same broker I did, and I didn't know that, and he didn't know that, but he did after my dad said something. I was making more money per box than all the other guys in that area, because they all did what I thought was wrong. And the part that was really instructive for me, because it stuck with me for the rest of my career, was sometimes you just think the guy on the other end buying isn't very smart. The fact is they are, because they're buying and they don't waste their money. And Chicago wasn't a place that wasted any money. That lesson stuck with me the rest of my career. And I've never been any different. And I also teach that with the people that work for me.
Yes.
That not worrying about things that you used to worry about. Think about doing the right thing. And the right thing will make more money for you than trying to skin somebody else. And that's something that is pretty common in most agricultural areas, not just Southern Illinois,
Mm-hmm.
where lots of people try to skin the buyer, especially if the buyer's not close by. And Chicago was a long ways off from where we were.
Yeah.
And from there on, I always preached that with the groups that I was a part of.
Yeah.
To me, it made a lot of sense. And when you think about it, if you look at some of the bigger companies in the country, the big buyers, they know as well. And you're not going to win in a game where you think you can game them. Now, maybe it works once or twice. It won't work all the time. And if you get a reputation for that, you're going to be in a lot more problem with the people you're trying to sell product to. That's the way I look at it. And I've done that now for 50 years or more.
John, tell us who else you went on to. You didn't stay in tomatoes.
No.
You had quite a career trajectory. Tell us a little bit more about what came next. You were a little boy, and then that little boy grew up.
Yeah.
What happened?
I went to school at Purdue, learned a lot more there about a lot of different things, especially molecular things, which help when you're trying to figure out what kind of crop to plant, what kind of pesticides you may want to use, because there's differences, especially in different areas. And so I learned a lot from that group for sure. And then I worked for Frito-Lay after that. Frito-Lay was the largest potato, still is, the largest potato grower in the world by far. And they had giant breeding programs, just huge breeding program. And they own virtually the entire potato chip program around the world. It's almost 100% Frito-Lay.
Mm-hmm.
So they knew what they were doing. And I learned a lot from them. Then there were other big companies that had a big influence on me as well. Anheuser-Busch, a lot of lessons, and especially in breeding. And again, making sure you had the top and best program. And what made Frito-Lay was a breeding program that came up with a brand new potato variety that was easier to get it into the field. And on top of that, you could put it in a cold area and slow the sugar development down. The sugar development was a big problem because it forced the potatoes to turn brown. And Frito-Lay thought, we have a program that's not doing that. We have white potato chips, which is what everybody wants.
Right.
And so they went from a small potato program to the largest in the world, and the first one with white chips. And that just blew everybody else out of the market. I mean, blew them out because people wanted white chips, especially when they got to taste them and they didn't have that brown taste in them.
Yeah. John, what did you learn at Frito-Lay? They were industry disruptors. Really, industry disruptors when they made that change. What did you learn about what it takes to be a leader, to be able to steer a giant ship like that? That's a huge undertaking.
It is. And what I liked about Frito-Lay was that they listened to their scientists, and they had a lot of them.
Mm-hmm.
They listened to people in the field, which I think is huge. And I've practiced that everywhere I went. We'll talk about that a little bit later. That's how you get more out of the people that you're working with. The other thing I learned from them is, and they were very, very big on training people. In fact, all three of the big companies I worked for, they were training people all the time. I had more training there than I did in college. There's and a lot of it was just as hard or harder than some of the college. They wanted to be the best, and they paid their people as such.
Did they only train the top level and
No.
the scientists, or did they train everybody?
Everybody.
Okay.
Everybody. And the same thing happened with Anheuser-Busch. You got trained and trained and trained and trained. And then one of the things that I think I've learned through several different people, not just the company, is how to take that training and working with people so they understood why that training was important. That is as important as the training, is to give them the why. They can go home and tell their family, look, I did this.
Mm-hmm.
They go to the grocery store and there's a big bag of potato chips there, or corn chips, or all the stuff that Frito-Lay's made. We were a part of that.
Yeah.
And they were a part of it because they were treated like they were a part of it.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know that you ever heard of Frito-Lay having a riot or anything like that.
Yeah.
They just didn't, because they wanted to work there.
Yeah.
And it's because they were treated like people and not.
Nice.
And I think that was one of the things I really learned there. And then as I moved on into being a senior manager in different companies, I always remembered that. And the more you can have your people understand why their job is important. I had the largest elevator system in the barley program in the world. And we trained those people that why their job was so important. So we teach each person the job, tell them why. Mm-hmm. And now you got somebody else watching what's going on. And we had thousands of growers, and a lot of them cheated, unfortunately. So we try to teach our guys, we got to catch that. And the why was, if we don't do that, then we can't make legitimate malt that turns into beer. There's no way. Can't be done.
So when you say cheated, for our listeners that maybe aren't farmers, what does that mean when you're cheating the barley?
Here, one example, we did not want product coming into the plant that had pesticide on it, especially fungicides.
Got it.
And because those fungicides would kill the hop and the breeding part inside the plant.
Got it.
In the production. We had a little bitty guy, and he was the lowest paid guy in the company. They were all told that, look, if you see something like that, then shut it down.
Mm-hmm.
Well, here's a guy, he's about 4'4", got all these big growers all around him, and he shut it down.
Good for him. That he had to be brave.
He was. And what we found was all along the axle of his truck, big truck, a whole gob of fungicide.
Oh, man.
It would have literally wiped out that whole crop season.
So the employee saw it, and the grower brought the truck in, and that 4'4" employee said, Stop.
Yeah. Later on, I got to go into a Toyota plant. Uh-huh. Same thing happening there. Now, that was a different timing, but Toyota had huge plant, and I was lucky enough to be picked to go in from Anheuser-Busch, because Anheuser-Busch was trying to adopt a lot of the same things that Toyota had. We can talk that later, probably over beer or something. But but they were told, any one of them, anybody on the line could reach up and pull down a lever and stop the plant.
Yeah.
Completely stop it until whatever was wrong was fixed. And Toyota wound up with the best quality for a long time, the best quality in cars. It was a time where U.S. cars were getting hammered for a lot of reasons, but that was one of them.
Yeah.
Bad quality because they didn't shut things down and didn't take care of it. A guy named Demi was the one that started the massive increase in Japanese products.
Mm-hmm.
He had a statistical program, which I think was brilliant.
Mm-hmm.
The U.S. industries.
They said no, thank you, right? Because he's American.
Yeah,
correct?
and they said that.
Okay.
And they did that. So he went to Japan, and next thing you know, U.S. cars were trying to compete with Toyota and couldn't do it. So that's what I saw at the big level thing.
Mm-hmm.
So when we got into different types of programs in agriculture, that same technology can be used and is being used in many places. And that came from Deming. And the other guy that was really, really important to that was a guy that I got to be tutored a little bit with was Stephen Covey. And I got to be in one of his classes. So he covered I'll call it the softer type work, whereas Deming did the hardcore stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And it was hardcore. And the two together were almost impossible to beat anywhere. And so big cities, big steel companies, on and on and on and on, they all were switching over.
They were recognizing the power of Deming's statistical ability to make systems more efficient.
Right.
But then they were coupling it with Stephen Covey's ability to help people feel safe at work and speed of trust stuff.
Yep. And the speed of trust turns out to be a big deal. You gain a lot with speed of trust. He and his son actually went to work and did a powerful bunch of research.
Mm-hmm.
And it actually will gain you about 24% more profit with the soft side, right? And now you add Deming's math and statistics together, and all once you got something that's very, very powerful. And you can do this in any crop, anywhere you want.
Yeah.
It can be done. But there's one other piece yet now. We've got that going.
Okay.
But now you also got to get your people on board with all this.
Right.
Because people are the ones that actually do all the work.
People are at the center of any change.
Exactly. And so it's up to the companies now to figure out how to train them.
Mm-hmm.
And now there's some companies like the one we're talking with today who actually go out and teach that. And it makes a big difference. And it makes a long-term big difference because people, again, they feel fantastic that they're a part of something like this. I got one guy that was a native from India, super smart guy. He'd been working at Anheuser-Busch for quite a long time, had never been promoted. He was very, very smart. He hadn't been enthused by anything.
He just kind of showed up, did his job. That was enough.
That was enough. But in the end, we weren't getting near enough out of him. So we had built a system. What we did was we trained our people to understand what was important in this and that it was for their benefit to learn that way. And then we would teach them the whys again.
Got it.
The whys are always very important. And I brought him in one day and I said, look, you have got to do more than just be 50%. We're paying you for a big lab. We're paying this, we're paying that, and we aren't getting enough out of you. So you need, and we'll help you, but you've got to learn how to put more into this. So he came to work when this started about 8:30 in the morning. He'd have a break, a long break. He'd have a long lunch, and he'd leave earlier. But now he's got something that he can see, and he can see how valuable it is. I went to our CEO and I said, look, he's really doing a lot of good work now. His number that we've been tracking now is way up.
Mm-hmm.
He's never been promoted. I would like you during our once a year meeting where we brought everybody in from around the world. And my CEO said, fine, I will. It was like lightning. The guy goes back to work.
So he got promoted in front of everybody.
In front of everybody.
Meeting. Big annual meeting.
Big annual meeting.
Okay.
And everybody, he just went bonkers. He started coming to work at 6. He'd take a short break. He'd take no lunch, no quit in the afternoon. And he'd be the next day at 6 a.m. He would go home at 7 or 8 a.m. or p.m. I'm sorry, p.m. And it was amazing how fast his ratio doubled. So
you got two employees.
2 employees.
Worth of work.
And really, that was another lesson that I've learned, that if you give people the right incentives, they will perform.
Yeah.
And the company and they and everybody else, the community, are way better off if you do that. So the question becomes then, how do we take people like that and turn them into that?
Yeah.
And it's really not that hard. It's about doing the right things with them. It's about acknowledging their benefits. It's about not ripping them to pieces if they make a mistake.
Right.
Because everybody's going to make mistakes. And
you can't be innovative without mistakes.
you can't.
Hey listeners, Mary Scott here, producer of Confessions of a Terrible Leader. Fall planning is in full swing around here at Transcend Leadership Collective, and a huge part of that is gearing up for the Lift 2.0. What is the Lift 2.0, you may ask? Well, let me tell you. Back in April, we launched our very first cohort of the Lift, and our attendees have spoken. Graduates of the Lift have reported increased confidence to pitch their ideal position and wave goodbye to office drama with effective problem-solving strategies. They now have clarity around their personal brand as a leader and dialed in their business plans and priorities. Managers have learned to maximize their employees' potential with our refined delegation strategy. That's right, the Lift is for managers as well as the next generation of emerging leaders. Someone's got to herd the cats. Anyway, let's elevate your career to new heights together. Head over to transcendleadershipcollective.com/the Lift waitlist to reserve your spot for our next launch of the Lift in September. The Lift, because it's way easier than hiking yourself up to the top.
Yeah.
And once that gets instilled into your workforce, you'll see a giant change again.
Yeah.
So bottom line, I could go on and on and on about this stuff. Because I'm old, I got lots of ideas, or not ideas, but lots of pieces like this. But for sure, it works. If you treat people like people and not like slaves, you're going to get a lot more, and a lot more than you think you're going to get.
Right.
If you haven't done this, you will make a lot more money. And not only that, you'll have the best quality, because that's the other part you got to put into this, is the Stephen Covey and Deming's idea of quality. Quality is everything. Under Covey, he will not allow people to degrade.
Oh.
It should be best from the start.
Okay.
And if it's best from the start, you'll make more money.
Yeah.
And you'll have less mistakes, but you got to train people to do that.
Right.
And so companies like Frito-Lay, Ford Motor, Toyota, all these companies jumped all over that. And that's when America's industrial people really took off. It was with that guy. Don't put a bunch of people out there and say, this is bad, and this is bad. It should be perfect the first time. If it's perfect the first time, you'll make more money because you don't have to redo it. If you're redoing it, that's a lot of wasted money. So that is now worldwide. I mean, it's all over the place. It's not just here.
How do we do that? How do we have employees that understand they can still make mistakes, but at the same time have the standard of, but we want it perfect first time?
Because
how do you make that work?
The way that works is you don't kill them.
Right.
If there's a mistake, you give them a chance to change it.
Okay.
And they will learn to change it. Especially if you put it up on the board somewhere and say, so-and-so did this, this, and this. That always helps because they're getting rewarded. Even without money, they're getting rewarded for recognition. And that's a big, big deal.
You're not pointing out, this is an example of a terrible employee. You're pointing out, look at this growth. Look how amazing this is.
And it's part of you.
Right.
You're now part of this. You are part of the company. You're not just a wager.
Right. You are important in the success. You're not a cog in the machine.
Even for me, when I'd go to a big grocery store, I'd look in and I'd see, that's our new product. That's our new product. It made me feel great.
Yeah.
You know, and I didn't do much of that work. My guys did the work. But when I'd walk into Kroger or Walmart and see what we were doing,
Yeah.
it just made you feel good and you want to do more. You have more help because people want to be part of it.
Yep.
And they're jumping into it and it just keeps going and going and going. For me, it's about treating people right. Always treat people right.
Mm-hmm.
Let them know the why, because that's very important. If you don't give them a why, it's hard for them to understand what to do. You got to give them. I mean, I got other jobs where we took people into the why and all once they just take off, even in a lab setting. If they understand more about what you're trying to do, and we had lots of new products and stuff that were coming out. We worked all around the world with this. But once people understood why, you got more productivity. And the other thing is that I really believe in a lot and have used a lot is that people need to understand that their ideas matter. And I learned a lot of this from different people. And one of them was a CEO, and I won't give you his name. But he forced me to get up at 6 o'clock and walk with him. And if you know what company it is, you might figure who it is. But I don't want to do that because he's retired and I am too. What he would do was he would force me to think different when we were walking. And it wasn't to be mean or anything else. He wanted to instill the fact that you can do more if you're willing to sit and think and talk to other people. And that's what he wanted to see in his company. And it worked. I was lucky enough to work for the 3 largest companies in each of their areas. And part of that was productivity, which is maybe one of the last things I should bring up here. But I believe productivity is a big, big deal.
Well, it's your bottom line. I mean,
it is.
It's linked directly to your bottom line.
Yeah. And so a friend of mine and I are working on how do we make that into a bigger deal.
Yeah.
And we had a little conversation about it today. But for me, if you can get productivity, which means you need to do product development, you can use product development or product improvement to get you into that start.
Yes.
But how many people are doing that?
Right.
Around here in a lot of the agricultural areas, not just here, but in other places where I've worked, that's the last thing they look at, which doesn't make any sense to me at all. I mean, there's lots of ways you can train your workforce, and we can do that for you, by the way.
Yes, we can.
Because once you do that, it returns and returns and returns and returns.
Yeah.
And that's how you'll make more money.
Yeah. I want to know, before we get to you sharing your vulnerable story with us about one of the biggest mistakes you made.
Yep. And I got a big one.
I would love to know, at the very beginning of this year, you decided that you were willing to, not only willing, but you wanted to move your initiative that you were doing under another umbrella, working with farms, helping with productivity, all of your passion, your wisdom, the skill you have. I started as a subcontractor with you, helping farms to learn how to communicate more effectively and leadership development through the collective. You decided, I'm going to move it up over under the umbrella of the collective.
Absolutely. Best thing I ever did. And I do believe that. I think what we've done together now, where we can get together, and the people that we've hired because they see it.
Yeah.
And they want to be a part of it. Okay. And that's a big deal. You know, I'm proud that we're doing this kind of stuff, and people are looking up at it. When we first started, there was a lot of no's.
Yep.
The no's are less now, a lot less. And we haven't even started on all the juicy stuff yet.
We're getting there.
So I think that's important.
What is your hope, John? What do you want to be able to proudly proclaim the impact the Agribusiness Leadership Institute, we were to say 10 years from now, looking back, what are your hopes for this valley and beyond that we can help be a part of in this beautiful agricultural valley we live in?
Well, there's no doubt in my mind that if we can get enough training into enough farms and we can provide them with a way to do this without breaking their bank. In fact, it should do just the opposite. It should help the bank. I'd like to see this area grow even more and grow across this state and then many, many other places, because what can make America great is doing this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
This is real stuff. It's not a bunch of words.
Yeah.
This is things that are real, can do thing, and it's not brand new. The big companies that I work for all did it.
Yep.
You know, and they're still doing it. And more new companies are coming in and they're going to do it and so forth. I think I'd like to see that. I'd like to see more and more companies jumping on board to this, because it will make a difference to the economies of our states.
Absolutely. Absolutely. John and I share the commitment, listeners, that one of the things we were super fast friends and immediately saw this shared value set when we met. I mean, it was almost instant. Like, oh my goodness.
It really was. And I talked to people about how easy this was. You know, we got two different companies to start with, different people, and they immediately went together.
Yeah.
I mean, it was like, how did this happen?
How could it have not? Yes.
It was awesome. It was really awesome. I'm proud to be a part of it.
And I'm proud to be working with you and all the wisdom you bring to the table. I know we both really share this heart for people and this desire to create pathways for the farms to raise up their new leaders from within.
Yeah.
We want them to be promoting from within as much as possible, all the way to the top.
And many of them are now because of our teaching.
We're creating those pathways, like the clear on-ramp to leadership. And then we get the joy of building out leadership academies and institutes within organizations. And that is super fun.
It's really fun.
Helping with strategic planning at the farm level. And if you want to adopt a new methodology or technology, be more innovative, creating the communication foundations where that can come into the farm and not tip everybody upside down.
And I don't think we're that far from it.
Yeah.
I think we got some work to do yet, and we probably always will, hopefully. But I'd like to see that. I think that would be, and where maybe I think we can wind up teaching more than just what we're teaching right now. We can become part of the academic piece. And I really believe that can happen. Because, there's a lot we can help them with as well. Because a lot of the same kinds of things that we're talking about would help them at the same time.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to push them down because they do a lot of great stuff. Yep. I came out of a university that does enormous good stuff. But I think we could take what we're doing and it could become part of the academic fabric, exactly.
Love it. I love it. Oh my gosh. John, thank you so much. I want to shift gears a little bit in our remaining time, and I want to welcome you into what we call the confessional to share your story of one of the biggest mistakes that you made in your journey and how it impacted you and changed you in the way you lead.
I always try to tell myself to remember this too, because it was part of my humanity, which was wrong. Okay. Because I was hard going, hurry up, get things done, blah, blah, blah.
Pace setter to the extreme, I would say.
Yeah. And one of the guys that worked for me, who I dearly loved, I chewed him out in front of all his peers in a terrible way. And I knew it was wrong as soon as I did it. And I apologized. And that's the one thing, if you do get caught in something like that, the quicker you apologize, the better. Okay. Because it will be less stinging. But here it is many years later. And this last week, I was visiting that farm and his daughter's working there. And I knew her and I walked up to her and I said, I owe your dad a bigger apology. And she looked at me and I said, yeah, I apologize, but it still doesn't feel right for me. I did a wrong thing and I haven't completed what I should have completed. And I can tell you it touched her. And I'm sure, I hope anyway, that he understands how much I really did love him. And he was a great guy that worked. He doesn't work there now. He's retired, but it's still not too late.
Right.
And so I felt really good about that I got that done. But if you make that kind of mistake, and most people do one time or another, immediately apologize. It will sting a lot less with that person. And in the end, that person is your cousin, your brother, whatever you want to call it when you're working with them.
Yep.
They're part of you and you'll feel better about it. And it'll make you a better leader because everybody else is going to see that too.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And, you can't just yell and scream. It won't get much done.
Right. So, it might in the short term, but it's not going to, and especially now, it works even less than it used to work.
Absolutely.
It is not the way to go. Oh, well, thank you for sharing that. I've heard that story before, just in conversation with you about this stuff, saying, oh man, I hate that I did that. I knew that it immediately was just wrong. And
I don't think I've done it again, but I got to be on guard.
Yeah. You're self-aware and you know you have that tendency to want to move fast. And when people can't keep up, it can get frustrating and you got to check yourself. So way to model that self-awareness, John. Good job.
And the other part of that, I think, is you can go another step farther with them by teaching them some other stuff right at the same time. And they will love that too.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh my goodness. So John and I are both, I'm learning so much from him. I consider John a friend and absolutely a mentor.
Well, it's a two-way street. Just
such an absolute joy that I get to learn from you and soak up your knowledge and your wisdom and your experience. And the thing that I love about you the most, your heart for people, your belief that everybody truly matters and that they deserve to go to work every day and feel motivated, engaged, and inspired. And our shared insistence that leaders need to know how and deserve to know how, if they're in a position of leadership, how to be worthy of being followed.
And I got to say that the group that we've put together here is really, really good.
Oh, our team's amazing.
It is an amazing team.
Mm-hmm.
They're very, very positive. It's fun to be around them. And, the other part of this is we're trying to expand out away from this with vertical farms. That's going.
Yes.
My wife has a wonderful one right now. And there's a lot of good things about that. And we're going to keep doing that where we see opportunities to mix what we're doing with training with other things that can maybe put a little more money in people's pockets. It's a big deal too. So we're working with that too. And it's fun to watch.
It's fun to watch and be a part of as well. All of that said, John, if people want to find you, to get in touch with you, we will have Mary link your email in the show notes so people can reach out to you, and you guys can go find us on our website. We will link the exact page for the Agribusiness Leadership Institute. You can go straight to that and check out more about what we do. We would love to just chat with you. If you do reach out and connect with us, it's not a hard sell phone call all of a sudden where we're asking for credit card numbers. So I just want to assure it is just a conversation where we're learning more about you. We encourage you, learn more about us, ask all the hard questions. If anything we shared today ignited some curiosity, John and I would absolutely love to sit down and connect with you.
That's true too. Thank you very much for giving me an opportunity to talk. Even though I mess up a lot, I didn't used to do that, but I can't help it now. So you have to be patient with me.
It's worth every second of waiting, and it probably feels longer to you than it actually is. So thank you for being willing to do this today.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, listeners, until next time, go manage like a leader.
Thanks for being part of this community of revolutionary leaders who believe honest communication, healthy conflict, and building cultures of acceptance, respect, and trust are not only possible, but non-negotiable for cultivating world-class teams. If one-to-one coaching, engaging workshops, or strategic planning that is actually useful are anything that interests you, make sure to head over to transcendleadershipcollective.com to check out our free resources. Confessions of a Terrible Leader is hosted by Lacey Nelson and produced by Mary Scott. Music is by Leif Olson and Mary Scott from the band The Number of Months. Thank you so much for listening. Don't forget to like and subscribe and leave us a review. And until next time, go manage like a leader.